Okay, and we're back for another episode of AlphaCast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with Dr. Bear Paul Lando, up here on the Smith River in the great state of Jefferson and on the border of California and Oregon. Alfa Vedic is an off-grid herbal farm and botanical gardens. We're a co-op, a health co-op, and really a community that's all about coming together, creating our tribe for true health and pushing the real boundaries of real science. And so it's just such an honor today to have Sayer G on the podcast, whose new book, Regenerate, is really pushing those boundaries that everything that we talk about. And it's just a fantastic read, and just so happy to have Sayer on today. For those that are new to the podcast and to Alfa Vedic, you can find out more about us at alfavedic.com, ALFAVEDIC.com. There you can find links to everything that we do, our Telegram group, we're on Discord, AlphaCast is the podcast, and all the products that we handcraft and sell. If you are interested in supporting this, if you enjoy this content, one of the best ways to support us is by purchasing those products or joining our co-op at patreon.com/Alfa Vedic. Well, today, like I said, we are so honored to have Sayer G on the podcast. He's the founder of GreenMedInfo. He's an author, activist, speaker, and widely recognized thought leader in the natural health and wellness space. He is also a reviewer at the International Journal of Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine, co-founder and CEO of Systome Biomed, and advisor to the National Health Federation. Sayer created GreenMedInfo.com in 2008 with a vision to provide consumers and healthcare professionals with evidence-based clinical data without the complexity of searching and navigating multiple health institutions. Today, GreenMedInfo is the world's most widely referenced natural medical resource, averaging 1 million visits per month, over 300,000 subscribers to its popular daily newsletter, and a social media reach of millions of additional fans. It really is quite a go-to website. If you're not familiar with it, I think most people that follow us are very familiar with this website. And it is really just a powerful force on our side. So we're really happy it exists. And then, like I said, Sayer has just come out with his book, which really is a culmination of everything he's been doing with GreenMedInfo, Regenerate. I'm about 2/3 through it. And it is a phenomenal read, unlocking your body's radical resilience through the new biology. And that's something we'll talk about a bit today. How are you guys today? Great to have you on here.
I'm excited to be here. I'm a big fan of both your work and what you're doing there, and I just love that you've created, these products from your actual, integrated, grounded labor of love, and you're supporting this platform with that. And I love that because we're all seeing the need to exit the conventional platforms, or we're going to get kicked out, either one. So you guys are just pioneers in so many ways. So very good. It's a great honor to be here.
Sayer, welcome. So glad to have you here. I've been looking forward to this chat. Actually, for a long time, we've had a little cursory communication on the airwaves there, and I know we have a lot to talk about. I'm in awe of what you've created, just such an amazing body of work and a resource. And I'm sure most of our audience is already aware of GreenMedInfo, but if anybody hasn't been there, you need to go there. It's really, I think, the definitive go-to source. And you're so well-spoken on so many subjects. Lately, with all the events in the world, I know you branched out quite a bit into other subject matter having to do with, we'll say sovereignty issues, for lack of a better way to say it, and that kind of thing. So just delighted to have you here. Thank you so much. And you know how we do this here. We're just free form, and we'll take it wherever you want to go. So we'll follow your lead, and this will be fun.
Well, thank you. Sorry. Mike, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I mentioned in your book the new biology that, like I said, I'm about 2/3 through your book, and that might be a great place to start. I don't know, unless you want to go somewhere else with it, Sayer, but I feel like it really ties in a lot to everything that we discuss on AlphaCast and that Alfa Vedic's all about, because like I said, when we were discussing before the show, you've done an amazing job at compiling all this, like these really, true science. And it's just such a well-documented book that really is showing kind of where we're going with connecting consciousness and spirit, and really where where we need to go away from the more traditional allopathic pharmaceutical model. And you're showing it with real science. So that's what's really exciting about it. It's not woo-woo. It's not just out there stuff. It's all grounded in the new, what you're calling the new biology. And I was thinking maybe if you wanted to give a little summary on that, or really just take us wherever you go. But that was kind of one of my thoughts as a good way to start.
Well, I appreciate that. So, to be completely frank, I was actually a bit intimidated to be on this because of Dr. Lando's pioneering work and dot connecting with so many of the subjects that I love to dabble in. So it's an opportunity for me as well to connect people that have been following my work, more of the conventional layer, a lot of them coming in looking for natural solutions that are evidence-based. So they can understand your work and the deeper layers of going down the rabbit hole, which is really what I think my book was intending to do, is really create more of a bridge. Because when we talk about the new biology, that's so arbitrary. There's probably 150 definitions of what that means. So my use of the term was really almost like a technique to get people to understand that there is sort of this ontological rift, and there are different worldviews that we can enter. The old biology, as I like to call it, in many ways is as we can see today with COVID, being wielded as a geopolitical instrument of domination. And because a lot of us who have studied the microbiome and virome understand that the basis for the concept that COVID-19, a singular, invisible, ubiquitous enemy, has shut the planet down, is, unfortunately, I'll use the word absurd, comes from my more angry young man earlier stage, but there's such a outrageousness to what's occurring from the perspective of the fact that most of the protein coding genes in our body have some kind of viral-like signature, 11% for retroviral origin. And you start to understand that viruses are not what people think they are, and certainly not in the way being cast as a spell globally to pretty much destroy the lives of hundreds of millions and control demolition of our economy. So that's the beauty of the new biology, as far as I see it, is it just sort of eclipses out the BS that dominates and is the substrate for allopathic medicine practice. And I was hoping I could introduce this into the world before this kind of thing hit, like a meteor. And yet there's something poetic about the fact the book was literally released at the moment that no bookstores were open in the world. And still it managed to reach a level of penetrance that at least I had a book launch. And it ultimately speaks to a type of understanding of the body that is almost better described in terms of the mystic traditions or some aspects of quantum mechanics, which again, Dr. Lando, I love your insight into this. And that's why it's all perfect, even though it's a grotesque mess, what's happened, with my book, with the world. And, my hope is that I can tie some of these pieces together and heal them in my own being. And then that is my new work. It's not to get more information out into the world on cures, turmeric provide. That's part of my work, but it's really about, healing myself and becoming a better person. And that's the kind of activism that I know you guys are grounding as well. And I think you can speak so deeply to sovereignty and things that my people have never even been exposed to. So I'm excited to sort of pass the floor to you guys.
Yeah, well, it all ties in together, when you're talking about sovereignty issues and some of the non-consent, kind of movements that I know you've been involved with. People in the past, they'd come in for healthcare, and once I got to know them a little bit, they'd usually get an earful about other things that are going on in the world, and they say, well, why are you involved in things like law? And I would explain, well, if you have an entity that is trying to control you on the deepest levels of your being. You are going to understand that your creativity is being stifled. We are creative beings. We're here for a purpose. And as soon as that is stifled, then, we fall into a state of frustration, and it immediately holographically translates into our biology. So, there was a time where initiates will say, whose light had been gathered to a certain point just through self-effort and application, they were actually invited into, we'll say, certain types of retreats. And in these retreats, you were required to know the ways of the outer world. It wasn't just all esoteric knowledge about matters of spirit. You had to be very, fluent in law. You had to be fluent in politics and finances, because they understood that if you weren't, then you would be vulnerable to those forces and never attain your highest spiritual development. And that's why somebody like myself, who has a vocation of medicine, got into all those things in the first place.
Wow. I love that so much, because in this moment, I find myself also, like many out there, struggling or trying to turn into an opportunity. The reality of understanding fiat currency, which I already kind of understood, but is completely vapor. It's sort of more based on a promise of violence, or who's stronger, and confidence, general the illusion of giving, as James True likes to say, the prana of our belief, to these structures. And so now that we're seeing that it is basically about to go through its death spiral, what does have real value? And it's folks like you that have been pioneering this. You saw it coming. You already understood, what fiat dollars are and the Fed and all these things, and have been building value and a means to create sustainable, although that's a terrible word because the UN has co-opted it, regenerative, systems and cultures for feeding ourselves. So I'm just so excited to learn more about what you guys are doing in linking all this together.
Yeah, it's my background going into the cryptocurrency stuff. We just did a show on it. I kind of we talk about how, like, my dad was really into all this stuff. He had me reading The Creature from Jekyll Island in the late 90s, which is that very famous book about the creation of the Fed by, was it G.W. Griffith? What's the author's name?
G. Edward Griffin.
G. Edward Griffin, who Bear has met in person. And anyways, and so it wasn't until I met Bear that he made the connection between the idea behind, as you say, the vaporware money and our health, and how important that is to understand that when we are indebted in any kind of way, whether that be culturally, fiscally, in our family relationships, it affects our health directly, because we're not taking control. And when we're not taking control, then we manifest that physically in illness. And, Germanic New Medicine touches on this. And, but that was really, Bear is such a mastermind at like tying that all together. And it really was like, whoa, that's maybe why I've been dealing with chronic strep throat for a lot of my life, because I've had a lot of these stresses and pressures. And that was something that was interesting. And I was reading your book, Sayer, is you too had, and you actually had it a lot worse than I did. I dealt with chronic strep throat growing up. And unfortunately, my mom, who I love dearly, and if you're listening, I love you so much, Mom, who was a traditional RN and ran hospitals, just kind of knew the thing to go to the pediatrician and get me on antibiotics. And I got in this nasty cycle where every winter I dreaded getting strep throat. And luckily I didn't get to have the surgery. I was able to I just didn't want to have it. And I kept fighting it. And so I still have everything intact. I have my tonsils and everything, but listening to your story it really hit me close to home, because, I feel like sometimes that's really what it takes to break out of the allopathic model, is that unfortunate suffering we have to go through from it. So I don't know if you want to touch a little bit on that from what you talk about in the book, but you too kind of were put through the ringer, if you will, as a child up until early adulthood with that.
Wow. Well, I love that, Bear introduced you to that concept regarding, obviously, not be dependent on external sources of power or debt, for example. That's powerful within the model of understanding disease on all levels. On a secular level of the narrative, I almost see myself as a victim of the allopathic system, right? And because I was born rather ill and treated, in a way with bronchial asthma and vaccinations and the whole deal, that I believe may have, caused a lot of damage. But on a higher level, I do think that I chose that experience so that I could then transform it as a way of service to myself first and foremost, because you heal yourself first before you can, really transmit a real wisdom. But anyway, I see it as an opportunity now. And through the lens of compassion, I really understand that the trauma is a substrate to almost everything that we call evil, I believe. And certainly that goes, there are many ways you can talk about that, but I do feel that that's a real gift that I've received, that understanding that trauma is at the root of most disease and behavior that would seem chaotic and evil. But I'd love, your opinion, Bar, on that. Or Bear, sorry.
Yeah, and just to be out front, I've never really had an original idea ever, but I was fortunate enough to learn with some really great minds, and they were icons at the time, and those people are not around anymore. And they represented, I believe, the last of the old school truth that was on the planet. The great nature paths, your teachers of Rudolf Steiner, who I was fortunate enough to get under the wing of a very well-known German musicologist, who was his primary student. So I learned from him, and then New German Medicine, which directly translates the understanding of the electrical universe and some of the things I know we talk about here, with the work of Walter Russell and other people that understand the universe from that premise. All of those bits of information, really connect up fine. New German Medicine is a medical application of what Walter Russell was talking about. And then, when you get into sovereignty issues as well, you understand the word game that's being played. And that, for instance, we're talking about the Federal Reserve. Well, all they did is they created a currency system. So when you understand the nature of the true nature of ourselves and the universe and our role within it, everything is electrical. And therefore, everything that we think, feel is a real event, a real creative event. And then that has to outpicture the same exact force in many levels of reality, in our health, in our finances, in the world around us. So when the Federal Reserve, back to them, they develop a currency system. Well, they understand the nature of the electrical universe, and we can't fool ourselves that they don't know about all this stuff. So if they're creating currency that we are enslaved to and have to use our life force in order to attain it, then they have a conduit now right into us as far as farming us for our energy. And the name of the game for us as individuals, of course, is to gather our energy and then use that energy as kind of like retro rockets, so to speak, to lift off, or however you think about that. But instead, the energy is inverted and, going down to our lower centers so that they can use it for nefarious purposes. So, it really does all tie in, the electrical universe, New German Medicine, the practical application of that. The money systems really have to go to the next level, or more Mike's level of expertise, where it's all one cohesive whole. So I'll let you jump in there, because I tend to get off on things there.
Well, I love what you're saying. And I know there was I think I recently coined the term electron to describe the total set of electrical phenomena given off by a cell, and that at the core, fundamentally, we think about the electron as epiphenomenal, that there's like this, set of atoms and friction and whatever the building blocks of that system say is real, and everything else is sort of off-gassed as electrical activity, but it's inverted, I believe, or that is fundamentally, what we're dealing with is, there's as you've discussed, I think, in a really powerful way around waveforms and everything being a waveform. So physical matter is quite an illusion from that perspective. But I just really enjoy the way you're connecting the currency, it sounds like electrical current, in this, some would use the term Luciferian inversion or co-option of our life energy that we are exchanging unknowingly, for what is really just, like you said, vaporware, money, whatever you call it. But it's like a form of harvesting. I like to sometimes use biological metaphors like, cordyceps spores landing on an ant, and then suddenly it just thinks it has to go to that tree over there on that branch and then take a nap. And a few days later, like mushrooms sprouting out of its brain, and it just, we've been endo-parasitically compromised by these systems. And it's also the memeplex, that concept where it co-ops and harvests biological resources. So like the newest sphere or ideas, thought forms have so much power, and they exist in a liminal realm between physical and etheric. So, it's interesting. I know that some of Steiner's work, he talks in this sort of language, but maybe that's what we're learning to do, is find that new language to describe what actually is happening. Without the words, then it has so much power sometimes, because it's happening. We don't know it's there, but it is happening. So anyway, so going back to the original thing that I find so compelling about what you guys are doing is, actually investing in creating a community where you're feeding yourself from your own efforts. And I'm assuming you use permaculture or biodynamic type of systems. Do you find a over unity occurring in terms of biomass and energy? Like you get more out than you put in? Or is it more balanced one-to-one?
Working with Mother Nature, I think she gives us back at least 1,000-fold of what we put into it. That's just my experience. You plant a seed and a tree, serves you for years and feeds you forever. So it seems like we're getting a lot more bang from our buck than what we're giving back.
Wow.
That's just what I feel. Yeah.
That's profound, because when you think about a conventional loan and the interest, or the Federal Reserve's relationship to our money supply, where you can never even pay back the interest on the interest over time, it's like a big Ponzi scheme meant to implode and devastate. And nature's totally inverted that, where you get thousands of times, infinite times back what you put in, and that benign superfluity, if you want to call it that. You see it with things that are so goddamn beautiful. Like you got peacocks out here in Miami. You look at those things and it's like, God did not have to come up with anything even close to that. Why not create a DARPA-like robot, like Elon Musk and all these freaks? But this is what nature does. It makes it so over the top beautiful and abundant. And that's what I guess you're plugged into, because you've made the commitment to decouple from the system. I think most of our people are still plugged to our devices in the system, have no clue how to make this transition. So how would you help those individuals that are just starting to wake up to what's about to happen?
I would, Mike, did you want to jump in? You go.
Wow. Well, that's what our whole platform's kind of about, is helping people with that. We're really developing our Discord right now too, to have different sections that people can dive into, from off-grid strategies to prepping for, just, it's kind of funny. It's like going back to your grandma's, or to like 2 or 3 generations ago. It's actually not that complicated, but we're not also the type that just like look back at like, make America great again. It's like, no, let's make everything better now by embracing old world technologies that are more self-sustainable, things that like permaculture and stuff, knowing how to can your own food and grow your own food and your own medicine, but also let's embrace decentralized technological systems. Let's, we're going into a future digital world. Let's make that digital world work for us by getting away from centralization and instead decentralized through our own tribes that can then all connect. So we talk about a lot of this stuff, but in terms of making that shift, it really is a consciousness shift first and foremost. So it's really about grounding yourself first and foremost, getting to understand who we truly are as infinite conscious beings. We talked about trauma briefly. I feel like we're still resonating off the trauma from the Atlantis destruction and really, ancient stuff that epigenetically affects us. And we still have a lot of trauma as a species. And, getting past that so that we can understand that, this scientific reductionism that really kind of dominates this paradigm that's really led us to a lot of advances also is the great Ponzi scheme. And we're really getting more and more in debt, just like the financial system, as the as above, so below mentality. I mean, that concept really is true. It's a true, principle of reality. It's a universal law. So we're seeing that across the board for thousands of years as we're getting more and more in debt because of this trauma that we have and our need to kind of reduce everything so that we can make sense of everything, when really we just need to let go. We need to understand abundance. We need to understand there's nothing to fear. There's nothing to lose. And then once we have that, then we don't have to hold on as tight. We can kind of experiment and have fun and release from the system. So we try to just be really, motivate people to be positive and try things, experiment with things, go slow at first, but then, really embrace the oddities, the weird things that we talk about, because it'll make your life more interesting. And then, as with COVID right now, it's really an opportunity. It's kind of a kick in the ass for everybody to okay, it's time to really go with things that the system's obviously not working. Everything's breaking. So let's use this as an opportunity to, maybe look at buying some rural land and getting out of the city, or at least look into figuring out how to grow my own food more and get into some herbology, growing my own medicine, start connecting with other people that are into this, jump into the Telegram and with all these groups that are popping up, and really start just having fun with it. And that's just the best way to go about it versus the more prepper mentality that everything's going to collapse, everything's going to fail. I personally think that's a romanticized version of reality. I don't think it's going to collapse. I think it's just going to keep going the way it's going until we decide, no, we don't want it that way anymore. So what better way than just start practicing in your daily life every day? So that's what Alfa Vedic's all about. And, if you're new to this and this is inspiring you and you're listening to this right now, join us on Telegram, join us on Discord, Telegram, t.me/Alfa Vedic. Discord. Now you can just go to alfavedic.com/Discord. These are platforms that are somewhat, not really decentralized, but they're not censoring people. So we can discuss these things freely, get off the gulags of Facebook and Instagram and the corporatized institutions. And let's just start working together as a tribe to create the future we want to see.
Amen.
No, Sayer, please.
I'm just excited to hear that, and I know that the many individuals that are on our list who are new to a lot of these topics, I think a lot of them need to hear that. I tend to be more dystopian. And it's sort of like a part of my disease wound structure, but it has a certain gift, which is I tend to look at worst case scenarios and really feel it at some point, and then try to create a different possible future, and try to call that in. So I like that you hold that space. I can feel it in both your energies. And I think it's probably because you're already surrounded by the infrastructure and signals of safety needed to hold that space. I'm in not that place. In fact, when my book launched and COVID hit, I was literally homeless because my home had gotten flooded. I was renting it and it was full of mold. And unfortunately, my landlord didn't take care of it. So I had to leave, and I was trying to find Airbnbs, and then they were precluding Airbnbs due to COVID in Miami. So it was really something. So I just gotten to a place where I have a rental that finally set up to do this kind of stuff. It feels so good, but we're trying to grow a little garden, and it takes so much time and effort. There's iguanas all over the place eating all of oh man. So we haven't been able to produce a micro calorie of nutrition yet. And then there's the people that follow me, which probably a lot of them are, not even close, or they're in the cities. So it's good to know you guys exist, have this place you're holding, and can provide that. So I encourage everyone to follow you guys and take your lead. I just got on Telegram. I'm basically removing myself from all of the, I don't know what you called it. It was really good. Oh, gulag, social media gulags, and the deep state architected gulag of social media. And so Telegram is where I'm going to be to get channels going, and then I can direct people to the new projects.
Yeah, wonderful.
So I would say, for the people that are just embarking on this journey, you're always realizing that you're in the perfect place where you're supposed to be. So never compare yourself with somebody that's totally off grid and, has 10 years supply of food and all that kind of thing. We began this journey, my wife and myself, in 1975. We saw the handwriting on the wall because of the circles we traveled in. I started making the move from conventional and alternative medicine. We were buying gold and, back when it was like $70 or something like that. And, we had our animals, we had our gardens. So it's not an overnight process. It's really a journey. But what we've learned is to just kind of settle down and say, hey, this is a benevolent universe. Somebody's got our back. There's a hierarchy of intelligence. And when you tap into that mindset, everything gets taken care of. Now, on another level, I consider myself a collapsitarian, so maybe a little bit more in agreement with where you're at there. But to me, this systemic collapse is a very positive thing that we've been waiting to happen for many decades. And it's just like, okay, let's get this slow burn over with. Just get a clean slate and do what Bucky said. You can't work within the same system. You have to create a new one. So we've been doing that on the side, and a lot of us and people like yourself, I know, are doing the same thing. So when the dust settles, then, we will be able to create a new with a nice clean canvas. I'll make one more little comment. I don't know about its relevance to what I'm talking about here, but you made a comment about metaphor. And I think it's all part of living in nature versus an urban environment. I don't take anything literal, and that's just me. I believe every experience in my life is metaphoric. And, when you work with indigenous people, which we have a lot up here, and we have a lot of communication and cooperation and ventures. If you're walking along through the forest and a bear, runs across, or if I see a cougar in the morning, when I first get up, that has significant meaning. And it really goes back to the understanding of our electric universe and how all of these vectors that we put in place create all these myriad events, including every single little detail that is supposed to be telling you something. But of course, like Mike says, we've been brought into this reductionist mindset where we have to make everything external to ourselves rather than understanding we're the source. So I think my own opinion is we need to get back to that way of life where we start paying attention to every little event and develop an act to interpret it as a metaphor for something that we're supposed to be paying attention to.
Beautiful. I love it. That's exactly the kind of sermon that I like to hear, because I have this nascent spiritual side that has been awakened by this experience. And it's so true to me now that, although I don't live it every moment because I get triggered, I got my wounds to clear still, that everything is infinitely meaningful. And the implication is that if you live in metaphor versus, literal or, meaningful universe, that we actually have a rather immense power to create circumstances that otherwise we would not want to admit we co-created or brought in, or vice versa. The most beautiful of all experiences that we are creating now, as you say, just by being present and paying attention to the way that, I don't know how you would put it, fractally, we manifest with the universe, the things that appear as like adversity. So I was saying this the other day, because I really love the Kali Yuga context, although it's dark for what's going on, is I feel like COVID-19 really represents a conscious global demarcation point, an event horizon. I mean, with the calendrics of the Kali Yuga and some Indian systems, it's supposed to last 40,000 years, whatever that means in literal time. But I feel like right now, if you look at what's happening through a secular lens, it's absolutely terrifying. But from the spiritual opportunity lens, it's the best time to be alive because you're not trying to preserve your little fragment of your body. It's about being fully present to yourself, to life, to enjoy the little berry at the end of the stick where the lion's about to eat you, like that whole metaphor. So I appreciate that you hold that wisdom, both of you, and that I see you guys, you're in the future that I want to land at, like literally. Kelly and I have been looking at trying to find a little plot of land, and maybe years later, if the UN agenda doesn't, inhibit our land use, we might be able to create something small like that here. But it's really important that you've done this because back in '75, I was in diapers, people know it's possible. They see it, and you guys are emanating a real strong and peaceful energy and wise energy.
Yeah, as King Club just said in the chat, best apocalypse ever. and really that's kind of what we talk about in our Telegram group a lot. It's like this is the electrical stimulus that we needed to really kick forth the new era of the new theology of science meets spirit. That's what we're all about. It's like we got to, obviously the systems built on the reductionist materialism are all failing. And we're seeing the power structures at play trying everything they can to force us into this, the Agenda 21, the Agenda 2030 model, which they must have happen if they want to control nature, which is what I talk a lot about, is that this is really man's ego for thousands of years trying to dominate and say man is better than nature, which, obviously man is nature. We are the divine creators. We work in harmony with nature. We're all one. So why try to dominate it when we can go back in the flow with nature? We can work with nature to create whatever we want. So it's really kind of like nature saying, well, here you go, take this COVID thing. And whether we want to say, obviously we've gone deep into the whole COVID thing on this show and explaining about germ theory and all that. And that's, important to understand. However, if we look at it in the more, like you were saying, on the more spiritual side, there's a lot of positivity here because quite frankly, I don't want to go back to what was considered normal. Normal was not working for me. I tell you that. That's why I moved my family out of LA 4 years ago up here, because I had a sense that normal was going to get really dire. And so we're seeing it play, and we're seeing like with the whole mask thing, and the mask thing is a really important psyop for them, a really important tactic because it's creating that division they need to create the control. So it's a visual representation of division. That's how I'm seeing the mask thing, where those who are subservient to the masks are the ones subservient to the control systems, the old systems, and those that are seeing the ridiculousness of it and refusing to do it are now putting themselves out there as the non-mask wearers. So we're visually noticeable in society as the rebels, as the outsiders. And that's a strategy that is really quite brilliant by the controlling mechanisms because it's just more divide and conquer. However, we're seeing that fracturing, at least on our end, and on a lot of different places. And while they're trying to really stratify it with mandates and all this stuff, it's just how far can you push nature till it just cracks? So I know you've been very vocal about the whole mask thing, Sayer, and it's a very divisive issue, and I know it's it'll trigger a lot of folks, but it's something that it's for me, it gets challenging. Like my kids were just visiting family and wanting to go places, and it's like, what do? You gotta still enjoy your life, and if it's a hard thing to face right now for me personally, and so I don't even leave my little town really if I don't have to, but if I do, I won't wear a mask, and I get challenged in public spaces, and I'll stand up for myself. But there in Miami, I know it's pretty tough. I think, was it in Miami where they're even saying you have to wear it inside in some places? And it's just, it's wild. But when we look at the spiritual side of things, we can see why this is being pushed by these control systems. And while it seems dire, it also seems like these are the stimulus for the great change. It's like whenever it gets this bad is when we have a massive evolution of change. So that's where I look at things. But in terms of, with the mask issue, where do you see it going? And, what are things that you guys are doing on your end to kind of educate and help people understand, kind of what's behind all this?
Yeah, like you said, it's a very triggering issue. So just, for me, it's like an inverted yellow star in the sense that, if you aren't wearing one, you might as well be wearing a yellow star. So that's how people are reacting to individuals who are concerned about the health risks of wearing one and the symbology of submission signaling to an agenda, which absolutely is not based on any hard science. None of the deaths required virus testing, only suspicion, and therefore the coding of deaths are completely fraudulent. So anytime anyone even says COVID death, it's actually a complete reification of the original PSYOP. Not to say there wasn't some kind of bioweaponized, toxicant or exosome that was deployed in Wuhan or will still be deployed in a region here, because our government's history is all about that kind of operation. But we know, obviously, our communities, that germ theory has always only been theoretical and has been completely disproved. And so for us, doing that work, we know that this is really more about controlling. And now people are being forced to wear their ideology or allegiance to what form of sorcery they happen to prefer. And so basically, the thing about the mask is that it's a placeholder for mandatory vaccination, as well as for the, quote, chipping, called quantum dot. It's not technically a microchip, it's the same concept. The incentivization or access to employment, to travel, to buying groceries, to have power and water is going to be based on whether you've complied to getting one of these fraudulent tests and then submitted to the Chinese technocratic dystopian model of social credit systems and 24/7 surveillance and dominance. And so it's difficult, because those who don't see that, and especially those that look at us by not wearing them as if we're harmful to them. I'd already seen this after 10 years of activism on vaccines, where non-vaccinating children would be perceived as a violent threat, dirty. So it's the well-trodden steps to genocide. It's step 5, where you start identifying a certain category, a minority, as vermin or disease carriers. So this playbook was written, and it's very interesting historically, because you could say, wow, that looks like a Nazi playbook. Well, with Project Paperclip, you know that actually that same agenda was imported to the United States and Canada. And then you can't blame the Germans or Nazis, because actually it was Wall Street that funded the Third Reich. Even Ford himself was putting all these pamphlets, eugenic pamphlets, out before Hitler, when Hitler was in his diapers. This was being cultivated in the United States. We are at the root of eugenics here. So a lot of what's going on is the delivery of karma. If you follow astrology, many people who followed me for years probably have no idea that I've been a novice astrologer, for 30 years. I love that system, and talk about literal or metaphor, when it comes to understanding astronomy and or flat Earth and all the other topics. But right now, with the conjunction of Capricorn and Pluto and Jupiter, it happened all at the right moment. 12 years ago, Pluto entered Capricorn. It's the dark Saturnian Satan system, and it basically imploded it. But in terms of it being executed in a third dimensional reality, it took Saturn meeting up there, which just happened. So the timing of executing, delivering the karma to billions just occurred. So it's very interesting. It's definitely part of the whole regeneration, Kali Yuga moment. But the mask thing, within that context, it's not just about whether you believe in germ theory or not. This is a sign of an international coup. It's like a meteor strike ideologically occurred. And now people are like Handmaid's Tale. They're donning the mask of a future that Orwell described as a boot stepping on a human face forever. That's what he said the future would look like if this kind of agenda was fulfilled to its end. So, that's my dark vision of what the masks are about.
Yeah, you threw out another interesting term, karma, and I think karma, unfortunately, has become synonymous with original sin, within Catholicism, which is what I grew up in, a Latin culture. And, it's also equated to doing something bad, whereas we have to understand, no, it just means putting electrical events into motion. And so when we consent, we have to understand we are needing to take responsibility for the consequences that will surely follow that consent. And relating it back to biology, in Chinese medicine, we talk about kidney energy, kidney yang and yin, and how that's kind of, our bank accounts that we're born with, and our job is to not waste it and cultivate it and then use it wisely. However, when we consent, we are literally giving away our will force, and will force, synonymous with the spine, where the energy rises so that we can elevate into greater bandwidth of perception. Now that energy is again being inverted and siphoned, and we are willingly allowing that to happen. And if there's anything I think that I would judge as a crime, would be, giving that divinity away to another individual to use for purposes other than what it was given to me for in the first place, to create my vision of reality. So, and interestingly, the law of the land now is all about the Uniform Commercial Code, when you go into court systems and use all of our numbers and so we can get our FRNs and go buy our stuff. It's all about Uniform Commercial Code. Has nothing to do with our original constitutional republic. And if you read that book, like here's one right here, Uniform Commercial Code. This is the new Bible of the world. And, people say, well, I don't believe in conspiracies. Well, if you take the Uniform Commercial Code and go to every country without exception in the world, they will have this verbatim, identical word for word in the mother language of that country. So are you telling me that that just is sort of like a big bang, everybody came up with the same book with the identical? Anyway, in this book, you have the terminology for us is transmitting utilities. We are a transmitting utility. We are a conduit of energy to that system. And when we consent, we're saying, okay, I'll give you all my energy, do whatever the hell you want with it, and I'll just sit here and weather and stay on the wheel of karma, if you want to talk about it that way.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my rant, but it really ties in biology with law, and that's another reason why I believe consent is the original sin. And, I know you've been quite an activist on the front lines of the non-consenter. I think you have. So if you'd like to comment on that, that would be wonderful.
Well, this is the kind of conversation that it's like candy to me. I love the way that you navigate all the dot connecting, because, compartmentalization from MK Ultra playbooks to the way society is set up, it's just based on trying to fragment the psyche, the divine wholeness that we are. Anyway, so I enjoy having conversations with individuals that naturally, they swim in this medium. So this is powerful. I wouldn't have known that. Transmitting utility. I was a student of philosophy, my undergraduate, and there was this thinker named Lyotard who wrote a book called Libidinal Economy. And it talked a lot about the body politic and the libidinal flows of this, thing that we are as a collective. And I find it so important for people to understand these sorts of concepts. And I just, when it comes to non-consent, it was Josh Del Sol that really helped me get into this realm with his Take Back the Power, Your Power documentary on 5G, and all the things we are complicit with, not consenting to. And I didn't understand it until later that is ontological. It's just based on every layer of our experience in relation to power, that it's not just some public utility company, but that we can learn to observe how we give our divinity, as you say, our power to other things. And it may be done out of love and a sacrifice where we gift our energy to a loved one, or if it's done consciously, I think it could be done beautifully, the sacrifice, which means to make holy. But there's many meanings, I'm sure, but that's one etymology. So I really love what you're bringing to the table. And also, by the way, when I say exactly delivering karma, yeah, it can sound really shitty, like I'm talking about the original sin we all deserve. But I like when some people describe karma in terms of cause and effect. And ultimately, it's hard to accept that kind of karma when there's hundreds of years of energy behind it, unless one somehow understands or consents or believes in, I guess, transmigration of souls, reincarnation. Maybe not. It's not mutually exclusive, but I tend to believe in that perspective so that it makes more sense to me. But for those who don't, maybe they think it's just one life and you're just this biological form. It doesn't seem fair. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't blame you. But I think that there's something very beautiful happening in this. It's just a matter of having the right context for understanding it that will make it easier to navigate.
Yeah, and then in the field of homeopathy, we call group karma miasm. And, if you look at past civilizations like Atlantis, if you want to just use that as an example, there was a period where very domineering people, a minority, had their way with the majority who consented, and therefore not only gave their energy away, but left holes within their own energy field that then have to play out biologically. So afterwards, this became a group trauma, using that term. And I agree, in New German medicine, everything is about a conflict or a trauma in the psyche. But this group trauma leaves us, as we reincarnate into a place where we have these vulnerabilities based on these old energetic, things that we all bought into and created as a collective. And so seemingly, or not just seemingly, but otherwise uneventful microbial events and things that are just part of the natural order that are in no way anything other than benevolent, all of a sudden do not have the normal controls that they should have, as far as being guided by our own innate intelligence. And then they start running the machinery and become the basis of a lot of what we think of as disease. They are the roots of a lot of the disease. So we can have these, traumas on an individual level. We carry in this collective trauma. But basically, it's about, again, non-consent, reclaim your energy, and not just clean up our own backyard, but be part of the collective that's cleaning up, what we all created collectively back in past civilizations.
Wow. I don't want to take the microphone, Mike. Why don't you go ahead?
Well, I was just going to say the notion of reincarnation is basically been supported by every great mystical tradition, religion, even Christianity. Geez, it wasn't until the Roman Catholic Church was really, I forgot which council it was, if it was the Council of Nicaea or the Second Council of Constantinople. I grew up Catholic. I was
Constantinople.
Was it? Okay, so I was an altar server for
You're a Catholic.
I went
to Catholic school too.
I went to an all boys. I went to an all boys Catholic high school. And I even considered being a priest for a little bit when I was like 10, 11. I was an altar server. I led the youth groups into the mountains. I was like hardcore Catholic boy. And but my point is, even with Christianity, the Council of Constantinople, they took the reincarnation out because it was very important for the control structure at the time to have the notion of a single lifetime with heaven and hell and purgatory and all that. And so, but my point is that really, if you can envelop the idea of that, that we do reincarnate and that karma plays a massive role in our health because of previous lives karma affecting us now. We're seeing it now with science, with epigenetics, and they're starting to tie this together. And one thing you talk about in your book is, which has become a pretty much in quantum mechanics, a very well understood and very accepted thing, is an idea of 0 point or the vacuum field or the vacuum space, where there is this infinite energy when you go down to the minute detail in the quantum field. And that there's even like, I think you talk about a little shrimp in the book that has the ability with the water, where it has like, it generates the heat of the sun. And so my point of bringing this all up is that going back to the exciting times that we're in, is that science is starting to really come down, starting to really show us that all this quote unquote woo-woo stuff is really all foundational and universal law. And when we get to more like the Walter Russell stuff we talk about, he even takes it way beyond quantum physics. But the exciting thing is that we are moving towards a new science, a new biology, a new biophysics, and all this that's really going to allow those who have problems kind of, are still really stuck in the reductionist mindset and think this is all woo-woo. Well, I think it'll allow them, as you're saying, you can be the bridge. This will be the bridge to allow people to accept these ideas and heal themselves in a way that will not allow the control systems to really have the finger on the pulse and the control of us anymore, because we won't have these institutions we look for. Instead we'll be able to have our own sovereignty and understand that we're really in charge of everything. So anyways, what was that shrimp, by the way, that I never heard of? A pistol shrimp, I believe?
Pistol shrimp, yeah. It's able to create a strike with its claw that generates a water cavitation toroid, and then it basically generates the heat found on the surface of the sun.
That's insane.
Yeah, I know, right? And there's probably far more going on there, as far as even what the sun is, and using sonoluminescence to generate the heat that we think is happening through nuclear, fusion and all the other things that go on. But anyway, so it's fascinating, the topic. But I agree with you. I think we're turning in ways to technology that, when you look at the megaliths, right? We talked about Atlantis and some of the remnants, several thousand ton perfectly mitered pieces of stone, right? It's amazing. But knowing what water can do, and even just through mechanical action of a propeller, you can induce cavitation. It could be through sound or laser. Ultrasound can do it. And your voice, when you go when you whisper, it has ultrasound. So there's theoretically, we could induce a cavitation event. And it's not just generating heat. It de novo synthesis of the entire periodic chart. That's something I cover in chapter 3 of my book with Mark Leclerc's work, who's an amazing technologist. And he has several patents. He worked for Lockheed Martin even. It's amazing they didn't disappear those patents in him. But he's alive. I talked to him recently, and he has discovered what you might call the philosopher's stone. But it's really amazing what we're starting to stumble upon. And I think, again, it's validating that the technologies that used to exist that could be induced even just through intention and thought are orders of magnitude more powerful than anything we've devised on this plane yet. And I think, Barry, you probably can speak to that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, actually, I was kind of stuck back on the sun conversation. I'm hearing everything you're saying, but I'd love to have a whole podcast just on the sun. The sun gives birth to the planets, and the planets give birth to moons, and understand that you'd have to get into the electrical events behind that. And interestingly enough, too, when you see, like, when a sun, for instance, starts going through its second phase, what we would consider the maturation phase, it starts oblating electrically rather than being full north-south polarity, which keeps the sphere. And by the way, I don't have any dog in the fight as far as the flat versus the globe head kind of thing. But interestingly, when you get into the electrical forces, you see that, depending on the stage of development of a planet or a sun, they do oblate and get more flat. And then, when they're more in their robust middle age and youthful stage, they're more spherical. But anyway, as they oblate, then they start giving off rings, electrical rings. And this can be greatly elaborated on. And then those rings, just like the rings of Saturn, those are vapors out there. Those planets are almost vapors because they're very aged planets. And so those rings, give birth to the planets and so forth. So what I wanted to bring up, I didn't mean to get into that. The sun, the important thing I think we need to understand is we don't just go out and get a little ultraviolet and vitamin D from the sun. We're getting the informational fields for every facet of creation when we're in the sun, because the sun is what we're birthed from in the first place. And interestingly, past civilizations had beliefs and, I don't want to say rituals, but something like that based on acknowledgement of the sun as the universal Godhead and intelligence, not going into some kind of primitive, sun worship sort of thing. But then in a lot of circles these days, of course, say, oh, those guys were sun worshipers, like they were pagans and these superstitious people, but actually they understood, where universal intelligence was, and there was a whole hierarchy. And within our particular solar system, the sun is the conduit for, the informational fields that play down in our level of reality in the solar system. So it's very important, I think, when we're outside, when we're in the sun, and understanding why it feels so good for us. It's not just because we're getting a little vitamin D. We are literally replenishing all the information of the entirety of creation, well beyond our solar system even.
Wow, it's amazing. I've been really interested in Eric Goliard's work. They call him like Tesla 2.0. And Nassim Harriman and
I don't know him.
Oh, you don't? Oh, he's amazing. Basically, the guy just pretty much lives out of his car somewhere, and he is one of the most brilliant inventors. And I don't know what you'd call him other than a Tesla 2.0, but he proposes, along with Nassim, that the sun is like a white hole around a black hole. That would be one way of describing it. So the sunspots are actually, you kind of seeing the black hole beneath the surface. And again, I think the sonoluminescent explanation for what the sun is very interesting. But what Mark Leclerc does is he discovers that through water cavitation, he's able to synthesize the entire periodic chart, preceded by actually a micro black hole formation. And then it has the same ratios of the elements as found averaged across all the elements on the crust of the Earth. So the old concept that meteors brought the elements here completely is changed by this discovery. And fascinating. At some point, I'm going to be doing an interview with him, and I think he's got some real profound discoveries that you guys would find interesting.
That
and waveforms are, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh no, you go ahead first, Bear.
Well, I was just going to say waveforms are the characteristics of every waveform, which is, a composite of these vectors, is what gives the different elements their characteristic. Like, just behind me, I have a little gadget on one of my tables where it reproduces the waveform for silver. And so rather than create silver colloids for, people that recognize the benefits to our health of colloidal silver, if you could get the pure elevated energetic aspect of silver without the colloids, not only would it be more effective, but it would be non-toxic no matter how much you took. So this little gizmo actually recreates a waveform in water, because water is the most malleable substance and the best recording substance to do that with. So you just, turn it on, and within 5 minutes, water changes color and it's pure silver, and you never have to go out and buy colloidal silver or worry about taking too much. And every element on the periodic table can be reproduced if you understand its waveform, and then that can be configured with the right voltage and other elements that you have to add in order to create what you want. So as Walter Russell said, we are in the age of transmutation, which means we don't have to go out and mine things out of the earth anymore. If we need a particular metallic substance to fire up an assembly line to make a car or something, we can create that out of the pure waveforms and then reverse the process when we're through with it and disintegrate it, so we don't need landfills at the same time.
That's exactly technology he's discovered. And yet I understand what you're saying is you may not even need to use water cavitation. You can use other devices just right to use the waveform to access that. Wow. This is so powerful and amazing. If people understood the implications. Like, one application of that is all of the nuclear waste from all of the reactors on the planet can be, decommissioned permanently by dematerialization or transformation of those radio nuclides. So yeah, powerful times, beautiful stuff for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
beat me to
agree.
it, Bear. I was just going to bring up transmutation because
Uh,
there's a ton of that discussed in Sayer's book, and it's just kind of like, isn't that really inspiring? If we can move into this Jetson Star Trek world where we're just transmuting things to when we need, and we don't need to go back to the scarcity mindset of mining stuff out, and we just create what we need and live in harmony that way. I mean, that is really the future I'd like to see. So yeah, that's just phenomenal if we can start developing those technologies more and put together the Walter Russell ideas along with what the more mainstream science is doing and really start pushing the envelope that way. These are the kind of exciting things and places we need to be going, and that's really cool that he's doing that.
I think if you can build in scarcity into any biophysical model, it's the ultimate brainwashing tool because that's what provides centralization of control and dividing us and fear that something's going to run out. So the opposite is abundance, which is actually built into the things themselves to the point where it can manifest out of the void. Obviously, that's the most threatening of all concepts to the powers that be. But at this moment, yeah.
I mean, that's what the Roman Catholic Church did, right? We were just talking about, they created scarcity with our spirituality so that we only have one life and we have that we have to be careful with how much we sin. And then,
One strike and you're out.
Then you go to, then they were selling the, for purgatory, that the whole, Martin Luther was irate about, and which launched the kind of revolution into the other, the Lutheran Church, and what were they called? I forgot what they were called, that they would sell, and you had to get those so you didn't you got less time in purgatory. But you mentioned something, Bear. You mentioned when you're transmuting the silver and you're talking about water. One thing that I've been really going down the rabbit hole is this idea of easy water, or the fourth way of water, and exclusion zone water, and that ideally that really we have barely scratched the surface and really what water can be and what water is. And you touch on this on your book, Sayer, and it would be interesting to see, Bear, have you done any research or done any kind of tweaking with the type of water you're using when using that tool to do the silver solution?
Yeah, it of course works a lot better when you have a pure water source, and I would caution anybody to use a device like that with municipal water. Water, we're talking about creating scarcity. They've even done it with water. There's no scarcity of water. The core of the earth is actually carbon. Of course, we've been taught that the core is iron, and then that iron holds magnetic qualities that then keep us into an orbital, through magnetism, which is another fallacy, which is it's so ridiculous, when you start learning a little bit, because let's go with that. Let's say the core of the earth is iron and it's magnetic. Well, by their own scientific parameters, iron melts at, I think about 1,500, don't hold me to these numbers, but something like this, 1,500 degrees. And the core is actually, they say, about 5,000 degrees, which means it's a molten core of iron, and iron loses its magnetic qualities when it's melted, so when it reaches its melting point. So anyway, nothing is congruous or holds its water the more you just go into their system. So if you go back to the understanding that Walter Russell substantiated, didn't just conjecture, that we have a carbon core, then that is the source. It's a biotic source of endless water, and there is no shortage of pure, clean water on the planet. And of course, there's even YouTube videos out where you can see a lot of intelligent people discussing the fact that there are vast untapped aquifers beneath the earth's surface, but that kind of information is kept from us so we can have water shortages in California and Texas and places like that.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, is
Sarah.
that also true, right? The whole biogenic explanation for oil, that it's not fossilized dinosaur bones. It's relatively limitless, although it
Yeah.
provides
Yeah.
some kind of function for Mother Earth. So we don't want to, obviously the bloom of the Earth is dependent on a lot of these liquids, and it's compromised and increased seismic activity,
Yes.
etc. But nonetheless, it's not, what we think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never heard of the
They come
carpet.
up with, yeah. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
They just come up with such lame stuff, and I'm pretty convinced it's somewhere there's a back room where they're laughing their heads off at us, but
So
that's
Rockefeller
okay too, I
Foundation
suppose.
elites who've been architecting all this along with their other buddies.
Yeah.
I'm sure. They're not gonna like our
And I do,
stream.
yeah. But transmutation is where we're at right now. And of course, it begins with our individual selves, which is why they create the scarcity, the fear, and everything that's being orchestrated out there, because those, represent different coordinates in consciousness. And you can't be transmuting in the higher realms when you're, fixated there. You can't serve two masters. So right now, I believe we're all here to make a decision, bottom line, on an individual basis.
Yeah, Dr. Binder, who we had on last week, who is just a phenomenal character, and I really loved having him on because he really knows Walter Russell. He made a really interesting remark. He said, we have the ability to have free energy, or whatever we want to classify that as, right? Where it's not based on entropy, because entropy is also another fallacy. But he said we're not going to have that until the consciousness on this planet is ready for it.
Mhm.
So, and that makes a lot of sense. So we're going through those really tough growing pains right now. And, I just feel like we're on that cusp. It's just like so many markers from the ancient texts, the mystics, the Edgar Cayce's, all the truth tellers and the seers. It seems like it's all coming down to right now. And so the Kali Yuga and everything. So this is really exciting, crazy times. And that's why for me, it's just like, it's really easy to get caught up in the negativity of it all and how dire things seem. But, just like with cancer, and I'm just finishing your whole section on cancer, Sarah, which you touch on a lot of amazing aspects that are very truthful. But cancer in the same way can go either way. When you get the prognosis, you can go down the negative side of, oh my God, this is going to kill me, or you can use it as a marker to go, okay, there's some kind of thing that I'm off with. I got to fix something. And then there's a lot of stories of people who recover, quote unquote, recover, and change their lives and are like living the best lives they've ever had now. And really, you could see this as kind of the personification, the cancer on our world has finally just come to a head. And it's up to us to whether are we going to continue going down, the war on everything, or are we just going to accept it and heal and move forward? Yeah.
Well, if I could just respond, the first thing you brought up was really profound because, in the yogic tradition, you have these siddhis or powers that emerge on the path. They're sort of opened up when you reach a certain level. You could gamify this concept, I guess, but they can be very dangerous. Again, this language you might not agree with, but they can blow back. The power is there for service, for healing. But this is true for the technology. Even Tesla's technology is a lot of this can be weaponized. So until the collective attains a certain level of, moral fortitude or coherence, these technologies will likely be, used in the wrong way. And I was thinking about Atlantis, the notion of the great crystal, how it was misused, and that sort of, we've been called the New Atlantis, right? We're a soul group that's reincarnated in North America, similar situation, and we're sort of on this cusp right now. So I find it very interesting that collectively, like water cavitation is like a city that has been discovered that would solve so much. I mean, endless clean energy and materialization of things like rare elements, which entire geopolitical chessboards are set up to try to fight future wars over, and not to mention devaluing even things like gold because you can manifest it. Imagine that, even the old hedges against the enclosure. So what is real value? It just brings all this up. People are going to freak out. unfortunately. Just because we've discovered the solution to having a 1,000,000-year plus healthy planet living in harmony. Yeah, but so anyway, I was thinking about that. But the other thing with cancer is that I've spent so much time on this topic because overdiagnosis, overtreatment is based primarily on misunderstanding what it is. And of course, with the work that you're doing there's such better explanations for what we have considered for so long to be strictly, physical causes and solutions. So, but it's promising. I mean, I will say one thing, which is that there's one perspective, and I go over at least 5 of them in the book, where cancer is our body doing the best it can to survive and adapt to an intrinsically sick situation, like Krishnamurti's quote. So in a way, we should be celebrating the attempts. And in one view, it harkens back to an ancient toolkit within the proto-DNA of our body, which is sometimes called Metazoa 1.0. And it's a way to default back to what life is fundamentally, which is immortal. So that's what, oncogenesis is immortalization of a cell line. Well, by default, and actually differentiated cells can de-differentiate back into immortal ones. But that is sort of the irony of cancer. It's actually our infinite, regenerative, immortal core that is, being in a way overutilized to respond to constant need for tissue regeneration. The same cytokines released are the same ones that promote cancer. And a lot of the genes, the proto-oncogenes that are activated, the same ones that confer immortality or longevity. So it's a very interesting way of looking at cancer. And that way it's no longer happening to you. It's something your body does in response to an already sick situation. It's an attempt to survive, which means more than live. I mean, it's really our superhuman nature coming out, but if not held within the context of meaning that I'm sure you guys have many layers around, it will end up tragic. Often watchful waiting and detoxification and just getting in connection with your emotions and clearing them will heal the condition. So as you guys know more than anyone.
Yeah, and it would surprise most people to understand that cancer is actually the cure. My experience with treating hundreds of cases over many years is that it most definitely is the cure. And it also coincides with the principles of new Germanic medicine, which has really created an evidence-based data bank to substantiate that. So as an example, maybe you take someone that smoked for 20 years and then they get the dark spot on their lung. Well, what's happening is, and this will sound outlandish, but smoking does not cause lung cancer. It absolutely doesn't, but it can damage tissues. Now, when your body starts, growing cells, proliferating different kinds of cells that differentiate to do what we associate with the tumor, that is in fact the cure. And if you understand what the body's doing, and then you can use contemporary clinical medicine to evaluate what phase of the process you're in, and you're going to know exactly how to support the body in that process so it doesn't get caught on an uncomfortable plateau. It'll go full circle every single time if a person is open to that understanding and hasn't done a lot of stupid medical intervention that impedes the process. And the growth will actually clean up the terrain that was, became toxic by years of smoking, and you have nice, fresh, new lung tissue. And what's really cool beyond that is it also clears the psyche of a lot of debris in the meantime, because biology, and the only reason why we're in these biological simulations in the first place is biology holographically plays out the traumas within our psyche, and again affords us the opportunity, if we trust in it and work with it, to again enter into those other realms of consciousness that we're alluding to here.
Wow, that's profound. I mean, just birth doesn't have to be. It could be orgasmic, and then water birth, etc., is a trauma. The moment we incarnate, and so, but yeah, what you're saying is so profound. I mean, I've studied a lot when it comes to the conventional causes, of cancers like polonium-210, with the tobacco industry hiding that particular vector. But as I got to better understand the power of the body to even materialize or even transform radioactive energy into useful metabolic energy, maybe mediated through biomelanin or something. But yeah, I don't know. I started to better understand, okay, even in the worst case scenario, we're here today because of what conventional viewpoint, last universal common ancestor cell of all living things on the planet is 3.4 billion years ago. And that itself was probably, again, there's many ways of looking at it. I could have manifested out of the void, but I believe panspermia, if that's true, it is some proto-fungal form. Life is immortal regardless. We have germline cells in our body, infinite replications, still living. So when people start realizing, holy crap, we're immortal partially, then they start realizing, okay, the old story about us being so weak and defective, and it's absurd. But it's designed, just like COVID, as a geopolitical strategy to try to dominate and control us in the Kali Yuga. But thanks to this conversation, maybe a little bit less so.
Yeah, you talk.
And if
go ahead, Ver.
I was just gonna real quick to say, if in fact this is an electrical simulation put in play by our collective and individual consciousness, how could we possibly be mortal? Because we're jumping right to the inescapable conclusion that we aren't this body in the first place.
That's nice. I like what you did there. Like being plant medicine or something, what you're saying. Wow. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. In your book, you talk about, was it oncogenes? The idea that there are these genes that are, been around for thousands of years that, could be the personification, like you were saying, of the that can develop into the cancer. And really, like, all of that stuff's great. I feel like it's wonderful seeing science get down to that smaller and smaller nitty gritty, but we have to keep reminding ourselves those are just the after effects. Those are the physical after effects of the greater electrical events that are happening from consciousness. And it's important to know how the mechanisms work, but in the end, I feel like that in the end, does it really matter?
I want to affirm that, Mike, because my book is really written for a certain category of individuals that need the scripture of biomedical science to believe anything, basically. And it's just a bridge. But we're already where we are now, where I wanted to go with this anyway. This was my way out of 10 years plus GreenMedInfo into talk about regeneration and live this beautiful world that we're wanting to create. But there's limitations. That's why when you said you got through 2/3 of it, I'm like, wow, that's an effort. That's amazing.
It's intense.
I wouldn't wish it on my enemy.
I'm a bit of a sadist, or was it masochist, or no? It's a phenomenal bridge and a phenomenal read, and it really reiterated so many things for me. Especially with the cancer diagnosis stuff, which is just such a the mammograms and everything. And it's important because we have a lot of family and friends like I can give this book to, and I won't look so crazy anymore, because it gives the foundation for people who are still just trying to understand these things we talk about, and it really grounds them into real studies that show, like, whoa, this stuff's real. Like, yeah, when you go get your mammogram, you are very much creating that state that will create the physical manifestation of the thing you don't want to have in the first place. So don't go get the mammogram. Stay away from getting mammograms. We talk about this all the time. So I know you got to get going soon here, Sayer. We're coming up on time, but one of the big things, the takeaways from your book and what we talk about is like the importance of just going back to the natural world, the homeostasis of our reality, which Mother Nature will always show us. So eat natural foods. If you can grow them yourselves, even better. Don't get so hung up on what your quote unquote diet is. Like, I say it's way more important to be raising and growing your own food. And that gets you out of the loop of having, all the chemicals and adjuvants and everything in the, even if you go buy like the best organic packaged food, it still has stuff in there that's added. But if you just go out to your garden and pick fresh fruit and pull out fresh carrot out of the ground and eat it, I mean, there's nothing better, especially if you started with the seed in your mouth to begin with. You're having this like positive biofeedback loop. So, these are the kind of things we stress all the time. And that was really the big takeaway so far reading your book is it's like, this isn't that complicated. It's like, just go back to the old school in some ways, like grow your own food, eat natural stuff, get sunlight, get normal sleep, try to, minimize your relationship to technology, be active. I mean, that's, I guess, the positive takeaway is like, this doesn't have to be really intensive and overwhelming to folks. It's like, you can really use a lot of common sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I could boil it down, what I feel is most important right now is people learn to fall back in love with and trust their bodies and nature. And the second part is really about the future of humanity. I mean, between Kelly and I, we have 4 daughters, young daughters, and I want them to experience beauty and the beauty that God created through nature. Because when you experience that, like I'm down the street from a nuclear reactor, Fukushima style, that's leaking and overheating. It's like literally 15 miles away. It's insane that we live here. But if I fall in love with here and these peacocks and the things that are so beautiful, then this is where we start really regenerating and turning back the dial on or going through the Kali Yuga is the time of the return of Ganesha, is another way of looking at it. And he both delivers the obstacles and removes them, assuming we go ahead and do what's right. So I feel like that's what's going on. We see all the obstacles now more clearly than ever. Thank God for COVID-19 then for showing us. But the real point is we've got to fall back in love with our bodies and nature, trust, and that will deliver us to where we need to go. So the book isn't necessary for that, but some people might need to read it to realize that, I have 55,000 citations on GreenMedInfo that I hand curated so I could write this book. That's the science they need to be delivered here. But the mystical truth, which I know you guys are holding space for all the time, is you can sit there and look at a blade of grass for long enough and you'll receive all the message you'll ever need in this lifetime or any other.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. It's just simply a matter of falling in love. I mean, that's all we have to do, and falling in love in a way where it's not dependent on a person, an event, or some outer thing. Just falling in love, period, and that's the way home. And even biblical scholars will tell us these times that we're in. That we term in biblical terms is Armageddon. Armageddon actually means new beginnings. And that's where we're at right now. Yeah. But of course it's been inverted to mean, the end and doom and gloom and fire and brimstone. No, it means new beginnings, literally. So I could talk to you all day, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I hope we can do this again sometime. Yeah. And we get to see your significant other here pretty soon as well. I
miss her already. I know. Let's do that. Let's do it together, or have her on next if she's willing. And
she's scheduled. She's scheduled for September, so we'll have Kelly Brogan on. We already have her scheduled. I don't know the date offhand, but she's coming on. So
wow, thank you guys. We love your work, who you are, and I want all my followers to be, aware of what you're doing, and so they can benefit. So thank you so much.
I hope we can entice you out to the Northwest sometime, because we've got
we may not
room for you.
All right. Well, we may not leave. We've got 4 daughters with very big appetites, so just be prepared. It's like a plague of locusts coming to visit.
Well,
we're prepared.
We're prepared for that. Well, hey, wonderful. And where you are too, you can grow the heck out of anything. I'm jealous because you can grow papayas and bananas and
yes.
And
we're in a tropical area. You're right.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't feel so bad for myself.
No, you are. I'm jealous, man. Like, you're an amazing growing area. So year round. So embrace that for sure. Well, anyways, this has been a fun talk as always. And Sayer, you've really been a pleasure to speak with. And I really am enjoying your book so much. And it's really just a huge service you've done for us and for this community and for humanity in general, for putting all that work together. And it's important because that bridge is so needed more than ever, because that's going to be the thing we need to go to the next the next level and bring those. We're trying to like wake people up. I hate to say awake, but try to get people more activated and understanding that to their true potential every day. So this book is on our book list. So if you go to alfavedic.com/book list, you'll see it right up there on the top of the list. So if you want to support Sayer and us, that's a great way to go about doing that. And please go purchase the book. I actually, full disclosure, I have it on Audible. So I've been listening to it on your beautiful voice on 1.5 speed. So that's how I was able to crank through yesterday.
That's a great way to do it. That's why I did it, because I knew I like Audible better than reading. So that works.
Yeah. So I was literally outside building a fence and listening to it yesterday. So, so, you can knock two birds with one stone kind of stuff. So anyways, everyone, thanks for listening today. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can watch it on YouTube. This will actually premiere at YouTube at 5 o'clock today on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Alfa Vedic. We'll get it up on DTube. We'll get it up on Library and all those, as well as we're trying to slowly work our way off the centralized gulags. But also, if you do enjoy, if you want to get involved with the live stream, we do it every Thursday at 10 a.m. On a platform called DLive, dlive.tv/Alfa Vedic. So that is really a great platform that we would love to support more. So you can join us there. And I want to give a shout out to everybody in DLive. It's actually a pretty good crowd in there today. And I want to just thank everybody, Bane Bear, for your wonderful contribution. We appreciate you, and everybody in there who's followed us today. Thanks so much. And then Sayer, obviously, for people who want to follow you, the obvious is go to GreenMedInfo. Any other places that you want to, hype up right now?
Yeah, thanks. Because we're getting censored, which is a good sign. Maybe we're saying something of use. We're on Telegram now. I have a channel there, Sayer G, GreenMedInfo Regenerative Project. It's long, but type in Sayer G, you should find it. And that's where I broadcast things like this and whatever is top of the mind for the day.
Wonderful. So please go find that on Telegram. We're also on Telegram, t.me/Alfa Vedic. And then if you get on there, we'll make sure that we route you over to Sayer too, because Telegram's great. While it's more centralized, they've been very vocal about not censoring. So we're really supporting them. And we also started our own little broadcast. So t.me/Alfa Vedic News, if you just want to get like news. But the community is fantastic. We highly recommend joining us there. Or if you're more into Discord, you can just go to alfavedic.com/Discord and join our Discord community too. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Get outside, go ground with Mother Earth, grow some food, go on a hike. Even if you're in a city, go hit up your parks. If you can, snap that face mask off. We love you, and just have a beautiful day. Thanks.